Hey, I'm Yoav, joining from Amsterdam. I'm working for Cloudflare since 10 months ago. I joined as part of an acquisition of a company called Zaraz. And I'm going to talk about one of the things we started there called Managed Components. So just one moment, I'll share my screen. Works? Right.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So managed components, and please do stop me because I can't see you. So if I'm talking too fast or if something isn't clear, just feel free to stop me. Managed components is what we're trying to push now as a way to redefine how third-party tools are working online and also not online. So we'll touch on that. This is basically this script tag that we're seeing on the top right. This is how usually third-party tools are implemented online now. You have your website, you put a script tag that somebody told you to copy-paste. Maybe using some tag management software, but even then, usually you would just add some custom HTML, and then you would paste that there, and then the tag management software will paste that into your page. It's pretty bad for obvious reasons, but just to touch on them slightly. So for performance, I mean, there's another server we need to connect to. This script can do literally anything. Like you have no idea what it does. That's also a problem in terms of security. And it can also collect things that it's not supposed to collect from the page, and that could cause like serious privacy issues. One of the most common examples we're seeing with that is how very often your page would include, even the URL itself would include some user identifying information, and then it would get collected to some analytics tool as part of the URL. And you really can't know because these things they just don't go at all through your systems. If you're the website owner, it all goes well, from the browser directly to some remote server. With Zaraz, we tried solving this, and this was about 2 years ago when we started the company. And our initial attempt was basically, we literally reverse engineered all of these, well, about 50 different tools. So we went script by script and their minified version, and we tried to figure out what is it that they're doing, what information they're collecting from the browser, how are they packing it all together into a request, and where is it sending it to. And we replicated all of that server-side. We happened then to build it on Cloudflare Workers, but it doesn't really matter for the sake of this discussion. We literally just collected that information once. So if you have 20 different tools running on your website, and the average for, I think, the top 5,000 websites in the United States is 21 different tools. So 20 isn't at all a lot. So if you have 20 different tools and they're all collecting the screen resolution, the current page, the page title, and a lot of other things like this, instead of each of them running their own JavaScript code and then sending another request, we collected all these things once, sent it to our server-side software, and then like manipulated, created like a schema for every different vendor, sent a request there, and everything worked just the same. Like all the tools kept working without running any JavaScript inside the page. This worked really well until we joined Cloudflare. And then things got complicated because we moved from 100 users to now we're almost 9,000 websites running Zaraz. And as we are running on more and more websites, one of the things we're hearing more is, can you add support for this tool and that tool? And it's getting, well, impossible to maintain. And yeah, we realized we needed some other way to do this. Instead of us reverse engineering everything and then like try to keep up with the changes that the tools are like on their backend, we realized we needed to shift the power dynamics here and essentially ask the vendors to write well, better tools. The thinking is that with the old way, I mean, when we're talking about these scripts, this is really what is available for tool vendors now. And it's just it's very powerful, but you can't really make it good, because even before you even started, you're already like demanding the browser to make one additional network request to a new server you never saw before. And so we needed to come up with this new standard, and this is where we started managed components. And a managed component, in this slide, I'll just read it. It's an open format for defining third-party tool behaviors on a website or an application. Managed components can execute code outside and inside the user agent, can present interfaces in a parent application, can establish network connections, and can provide custom APIs. Managed components require a runtime environment to work. And I'll touch on this runtime environment in a second, but just to talk a bit about the benefits of writing a managed component comparing to this script we saw earlier. So first, all managed components running in a site, they're connecting to one centralized event system. So instead of, if previously you have to have something like GA send to send an event to Google Analytics, and then FBQ track to send an event to Facebook, and each and every tool have their own event collection API often. Here, all the components can hook into the same event system, and then the website only needs to trigger one event, and it will get dispatched everywhere. Managed components can run from the same domain, and that means that not only that it can introduce, well, it can serve static assets like images or JavaScript or CSS files from the same domain as the website. They can even introduce server logic, so they can register a specific route under the domain and really define programmatically what happens when a request hits that route. We'll see an example of that in a moment. Server-side rendering of embeds. This is my personal excitement in this project, is where if you have an article now on some newspaper website and it has a Twitter embed, for example, what would usually happen is that the website would, like the page would load, the whole article appears. Suddenly, the browser notices the script at the bottom. It goes to Twitter, it fetches the tweet, fetches all the assets that it requires. The whole page jumps because suddenly there's this thing in the middle of the page. And then you see that tweet inside the page. With server-side rendering of embeds, all of this thing can happen while the response is being streamed to the browser, meaning that the tweet will be embedded already and Twitter will be connected already before the browser even seen the request. Meaning that it all appears to be 100% first party. Nothing jumps, like there's no layout shifts. And the browser never needed to even connect with the Twitter server. Client events is where we're trying to standardize well, different types of events like scroll, view, click, different things like this. But in a way that would be not only cross-browser, but also cross-platform. So that's why I said earlier that it's for well, the web and also outside the web. We're trying to create a set of events that you can also then, well, once you listen to them, your managed component can also run on a mobile application or on a desktop application. And all those events will actually work exactly the same. Pre-page rendering of actions. This has to do with the fact that because managed components run inside the server, well, if you run an analytics tool, for example, today the website would load, and then it would load the analytics tool, and then a page view would be sent. With managed component, you actually know about the page view as the request hit the server. So before the browser even rendered anything, you can already collect some information. And lastly, the whole system is very much intertwined with a permission system that we're also utilizing in order to manage consent better. We'll touch on that later if we have time. This is a tiny example of a component that all it does is whenever there is a page view, it just puts this event listener. It asks the manager actually to put the event listener on page view. And whenever it happens, this event gets dispatched. The tool runs this code, which means that we're sending a post request to this tool endpoint. In this case, we're forwarding the URL that's currently being seen and the IP. Again, this is a tiny example. You can implement, obviously, many more, much more complex things here. But the cool thing about this example analytics tool is that it runs zero JavaScript at all in the website, like literally not even one line, and you can collect a lot of information already. Here we have a small example of some of the server-side capabilities. I mentioned that you can introduce your own routes. So here we're doing this with the /ping. And you can also serve static assets or literally proxy a whole other domain. And then it appears under as if it came all from one domain. Now, I said earlier that managed components require some kind of runtime environment to run. And this is because generally they don't have to run in the browser. The manager is the one that runs these components, because these components we saw before, they're just an exposed function. They're just a JavaScript module. Somebody needs to import them and execute them. And this is the manager. So the manager is the one that actually, well, dispatches all the events to the different components. It provides all those server-side capabilities, so it registers all those endpoints. It manages storage and caching for the components, and it executes all the server-side code. So if the component actually includes some JavaScript code that needs to be executed, the manager is actually the environment that this thing will get executed. Second, the manager also enforces everything that has to do with the user configuration. When I'm saying the user, I mean the website owner. So the website owner can decide what modules to load, like what components to load, when to load them, like only under these pages, only for this user agent, only for people from these countries, which events should be passed to the different components. And lastly, what permissions to grant to each of the different tools. And this is important because basically, a managed component can do everything that you can do with a normal script nowadays. But this is what we consider like the root permission. So if you want to execute JavaScript code inside the browser in the top frame, this is the root permission because it means literally that you can do everything. And we are working now with quite a few vendors. And with all of them, we're very much discouraging them from asking for this permission. But there are, if everything that you're doing is completely server-side, and if you're not asking for any PIIs, then your tool will usually not need to ask for any permissions. But as you're asking to do more things inside the browser, or as you're asking to get more information into visitors' information, then the tool needs to ask for these permissions, and the manager has to be this piece of software where this is enforced. This manager can be implemented in many different ways. We're really building this to not be only a one-way thing. We are working on a proxy implementation of this, but it can also be implemented as an HTTP server, a mobile SDK, a service worker that runs 100% client-side, and maybe more. I mean, we'd be very happy to hear other ideas for where this can work. Now, we are trying to work on these specs for managed components together with vendors. This is what we have right now. Again, I'm from Cloudflare, and I think we have nowadays about 6 different vendors we're working with. It's very much a collaborative effort. So like some vendor comes and say, we also need this event, and how do we handle this? And we're trying to really think about these things together, but personally, and we as a team would love to have more inputs here, and to just make sure that this standard can work for more and more for more types of tools, essentially. One of the things that we're really pushing forward, and this is going to be released very soon, is WebCM. And WebCM is our open source implementation. It's a reference implementation of a component manager that you can take today and put it on your website. It works as a proxy, and then you can run managed components on your site now. And because there are no yet any managed components outside in the wild, we are taking 10 different components that we're running inside Zaraz, and we are open sourcing them too. So hopefully by the end of this month, everybody on the internet can take WebCM and can take our 10 managed components. It includes Facebook Pixel, Google Analytics, LinkedIn, Twitter, I can't remember, but quite a few, and run them on the website completely independently of Cloudflare or anything. It's all 100% open source. Yeah, so this is how we're trying to push this forward. This is more like just a general vision. I think we're aiming towards a place where analytics tool, they just don't run anything in the browser at all, that embeds all pre-rendered and cache. Session recording tools that are light and they're not just making the browser die as they're recording everything. Complex widgets that you can put into your website, but they're coming without any security concerns because they're sandboxed. Migration between web to mobile and desktop of components. This audited and controlled execution environment so that people would know what they're actually running on the website. And just a standard and safe way to deploy third-party tools online. What we're seeing with third-party tools, and maybe I should have started with this, is that, I mean, we scanned the top 5,000 websites in the United States, and we saw that, yeah, the average was 21 different tools, and the slowdown, like the reduce in the Lighthouse score for website was of 41% when you measured the impact of third-party tools, like when you loaded them or blocked them. So we're seeing a lot of potential here, and yeah, trying to bring this to everybody. So I'd be super happy to hear what you're all thinking, and yeah, how we can make this better together. I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Yeah, let me stop the recording and we can discuss.